Hey, you guys, welcome to book review number 59. Beyond the Sky and the Earth, A Journey into Bhutan by Jamie Zeppa. I don't know if you guys can see that. Jamie Zeppa. Well, as the title would suggest, this is a story of a woman that spent some extensive time in Bhutan, a mostly Buddhist country that exists between Tibet, which is now part of China, and the Assam state of India, and also Sikkim in India. But anyway, it's known as the happiest kingdom on earth because it's very sort of agrarian, kind of that idealistic, Buddhist paradise, kind of like Shangri-La, if you will. And Jamie, who is from Canada and by her grandfather, who she was raised by, much like Barack Obama, check the next review, was kind of going in a English master's degree program at, I want to say Waterloo or some program in the province of Ontario. Was kind of saying, okay, this is getting a little too restricting for me. I need to find a new path in life. And so she actually went to go teach English in Bhutan for what wound up being 3 years, but initially on a 2-year contract. And of course, this idyllic setting provided some of the idealism that people fawn about when they talk about Bhutan, but also there are a lot of problems in Bhutan too. There is poverty. There's just sort of the educational system is very rote. I don't know. The first thing I attack be the education system. It is just kind of what you would expect from backward society. There's a lot of occasionally there'll be plagues that come through. There's a lot of like landslides and earthquakes. So it's not all perfect. But she kind of starts at an elementary school let me look up, I think the map is in the back, in Pima Gat-Shal. This is all in the eastern part of Bhutan, away from Thimphu and the capital. We're talking small villages at this point, and students that come from miles and miles. And the biggest problem she has teaching these students is they know the words, but they don't know the meaning. And not only is this a problem teaching the students, it's also reinforced by the educational system taught by all the other teachers. In sort of the Hollywood version, she would overcome this, but she doesn't. She helps some students become more analytical and really takes pride in the ones that she really sees as some sort of self-fulfilling, but that's not the majority of the students. The majority of the students, just learn the words so they can pass the test. Another problem, she said, is that just the way that school is viewed is very different. Students, because they live in a wide range, kind of in these agrarian areas, on a daily basis just come in when they can come in, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock. It's not so much because the students are truant, but because it's just what works into the schedule of the families. She also said that the students were very distractible. Now, this is true for all students of this age, but because the society is there's much more languor, ease of structure in the society, that keeping these students in line was very hard. And actually what the teachers would do that she really disapproved of is use corporal punishment, correct that whip, which obviously if you talk to any child psychologist, might get the children in line temporarily, but is bad for the long-term psychological health of the students. She also talked about just some of the stuff around there. Controversially, actually it's probably not that controversial. The marijuana plant, cannabis, is native to the Himalayas, and she said that it would just grow all over the place. And just as a side, almost every teacher that was there would just occasionally smoke some dope just to because it was something to do, because there was so much time, because it was such a slow-paced society. And now that's not the reason it's a slow-paced society, though, because she said that only the Westerners would smoke the cannabis plant, that the natives actually thought this very strange and just fed the cannabis plant, which grows like a weed there, to like pigs, to raise the pigs. So there's that. I guess that's a bit of cultural information. But eventually she moves on to a college in, let's see here, I want to say it's near Tashengang, yeah, which is like one of the two main colleges in Bhutan. Now, Bhutan doesn't have an extensive higher educational system, but she does say, the physical buildings are much nicer. She said that when she worked in Pima Gashal, it was kind of in the lowlands of Bhutan. Bhutan is in, like I said, in the Himalayas, but kind of starts near the plains of India. So the very south of the country is low elevation, i.e. jungle, very mildewy. And then as you go north, it gets much cooler as you get into the mountains. She said that the place she had in Pima Gashal was very mildewy, just everything very rotty, just everything that you would expect kind of in a not quite but near jungle environment. Okay, so she moves on to the college in Tashengang and enjoys her time there. She says there is really where she more found her niche, because she could teach more kind of advanced English instead of the cow sits on the road, or the lazy dog jumps, or the brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, or whatever. She could actually teach like Shakespeare and different sort of advanced English, more literary kind of English than just rote English. This is shaking quite a bit. And it's also here that she met what would eventually be her husband, and also got extensively into Buddhism. Let's see how much time we got here. Okay, 7 minutes. And really that's what the majority of the book is about kind of her relationship with this man and the Buddhist practices that she learned. I'm actually going to have to split this review into 2 parts because I'm running out of juice on my laptop. So stick around. I'll provide a link. Beyond the Sky and the Earth. Check out part 2 in just a second. Alright, see you guys. Hey you guys, welcome to part 2 of Beyond the Sky and the Earth. Journey into Bhutan by Jamie Zeppa. Okay, as I was mentioning before I had to cut out, Jamie had moved to a college in Tashengang, which was kind of I would almost describe it sort of as like an educational mountain town, or hilltop town. Now, if you know anything about the British Raj, or even in Indonesia, they had these kind of idyllic skytop towns to get away from the sweltering heat of the main cities, which is sort of like all of Bhutan to a degree, because most of it is up in the Himalayas. But I'd say the biggest thing is Tashengang, particularly the campus, resembled much more a cleaner version, kind of like an American campus, whereas some of the towns that were much cooler in other parts of the Himalayas in Bhutan were also a lot more dirtier, and also a lot poorer. This tended to be the upper class, people that could afford to send their kids to, send their kids, oh, that color's bad, to university within the entire nation of Bhutan. Now, one of the things I didn't mention in the first part of the review was during this entire time there was a slow simmering of ethnic tension between Hindu Nepalese, who are a minority in the country, and the majority Buddhist Bhutanese. This primarily having to do with religion, but also to a degree race. She did mention, from an outsider's perspective, it's often odd to see religions that seem to have quite a bit in common, such as, or at least from the perspective of the individual, they seem to have a lot in common, such as Buddhism and Hinduism fight among one another. I guess it would be similar to the idea of like a Buddhist from Tibet or Bhutan or something that had been very isolated but had some education, moving to the West and seeing a huge conflict between Protestants and Catholics, even though the tenets of the Bible and the tenets of the churches tend to be fairly similar. They kill each other in the name of the same person they're essentially worshiping. And there's even more obviously split in Hinduism and Buddhism than there is in different branches of Christianity. But still kind of some of the founding principles are similar. But the other thing that sort of developed, like I said, is this is ethnic tension. A lot of the Nepalese were brought in by the British Raj under the Britain, to be sort of, if not slaves, sort of like very cheap labor in southern Bhutan during the tea plantation days, when tea in what is the northeast part of India, Assam, as well as most of the country of Bhutan, was very, very popular drink and a very profitable drink in Europe, export drink from the Indian subcontinent. And of course these people stuck around, put their roots down the first few generations. And now, because Bhutan's an independent country and things have just kind of boiled to the surface, there's starting to be ethnic tension. And she also mentioned that oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough to the people, but maybe oddly enough to us in the West, is the national dress. And that actually the puli, I believe it's called, I could be wrong about that, kind of robe type deal that most people in Bhutan wear is actually a required national dress of the country. Now, this isn't that weird considering it's just something that's inherent within the culture. So most people do it. Of course, the one people that aren't going to do this are native Nepalese, who tend to wear their own dresses. When I say dresses, I don't mean women's dresses. I mean like apparel. And so as a way of protest on this campus, there were actually a bunch of Hindu Nepalese that during one of their big days of worship wore their own dress, got their own idol, and went and washed it in the local river that runs through Bhutan to cleanse it. But I don't think they initially meant it in protest of the Bhutan way, but sort of in pride of their own culture and in a society that is very, I think backwards is the wrong word, but sort of idealistically backwards. That's not going to play well. So there was a lot of conflict there, and in classic circumstance, it does not get resolved by the end of the book, and probably won't be unless there's mass migration or something like that, which he actually did mention. There were a number of Nepalese that were moving back to Nepal. And you would think that this would be kind of a natural course of action, but you got to remember that these people have been in Bhutan for 100 years or more, so their roots are in Bhutan, even though ethnically they're from Nepal. Other things about the book. She talks about her own conversion to Buddhism. I think I mentioned that in the first part, along with the man that she eventually marries. Her conversion does not rackle well with her grandfather, who, as I mentioned in the first part, is very sort of a 9-to-5 company man, get a good job, be focused, middle Canada, you could say middle Midwesterner type person. But obviously those problems are very far away, even though at the front of her mind when she's in Bhutan. She really just enjoys what she sees as kind of the holistic approach of Buddhism. And I mean, I find some appeal there myself. I wouldn't say I would ever convert to Buddhism, but it's certainly less specific in its dogma. Well, it is specific in its dogma, but it's more kind of free-flowing in its dogma than in the West, which tends to give advice on very particular circumstances, but not dealing with sort of the larger role of the human within society. In the West, the larger role of the human in society is to serve God through the Catholic or Protestant, whatever church there is, and then work hard, make money, family man. Whereas in the East, it's much more free-flowing what exactly your life role is. And we do have philosophy in the West, but that tends to be delegated to academia and not known by the general populace. And so the philosophy of Buddhism in the West might be less particular, and some might say more hypocritical, like in the violent acts against Nepalese perpetrated by Buddhists, but is generally more known kind of on a base level by the general populace. I would say that that's probably true. But obviously the base populace in the United States knows Christianity, but they just know more the tenets than like why that exactly is that they believe what they believe. If that makes sense. What else? Oh, okay. The man she married. She talks about sort of the kind of cultural conflict between the two. You know, she says for a long time in their deluge, if you will, he was a student, she was a teacher, and initially they didn't have any classes. She didn't teach any classes that he was in. But in the second semester, after they started dating, she actually was in one of the classes. They had to maintain this facade because obviously it would be a huge scandal and more in a traditional sense of the word conservative society to have a student date a foreign teacher. I mean, that's scandalous. And when they do eventually come out of the closet, it is very sort of groomed how they're going to do it so that it doesn't break any eggshells, if you will. But ultimately, people don't have a problem with it, which is kind of something that's nice. I felt that while there was a little bit of backlash, she just doesn't really mention a lot of backlash. She kind of mentions that suddenly one day they're a known entity. She ends the book going back to Canada and getting married, and then doing the third year. She's kind of like starting that up. I think she actually goes. What is it? Yeah, I think she does do she talks about some of the third year in the book. But anyway, by that point, she's no longer an expatriate that's kind of settling in. She's fully within Bhutanese society and kind of living in both societies at the same time, both in her heritage as a Canadian as well as really fitting into her role in Bhutanese society. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty good book. I guess one of the things that I forgot to mention is kind of earlier in the book when she's having all these... she doesn't quite fit into the society. She often relies upon other teachers in this program that she's in. It's a sort of like a Canadian and British. It's actually a British Commonwealth, so Canada, Australia, Britain, New Zealand version of what the Peace Corps is, of sending people overseas to either do health stuff or primarily teach, I think, in this circumstance. But she says she relies upon some of her fellow teachers. The problem with this being is that at first she's in an isolated settlement where she might be able to see him on weekends, but she has to walk like 16 miles or catch some, ride in the back of some flatbed truck 40 or 50 miles to see the next white person, or at least the next white person who's like a teacher and not like some sort of asshole government contractor. But anyway, yeah, it was a good book. I don't think what else I want to say. It's a good book. Yeah, it is very sort of narrow in its scope. It doesn't travel around to a whole lot of different places. Kind of the initial starts in Canada, but even in Bhutan, it's primarily set within one corner of Bhutan. But I feel you can kind of extrapolate what the nation of Bhutan is about, which very few people know about because it's very isolated, by the book. The mountains, it's really a theocracy. The theocracy of the country is very good. So This book is already 12 minutes, and plus I got the other one, so check it out. Beyond the Sky and the Earth, A Journey into Bhutan. All right, I'm gonna do some more. Check the reviews out. See you guys. Where you at? See ya. Bye.